Allison Gill is here. Hooray!
Hello.
From Mueller, She Wrote in the Daily Beans. Okay, well, Glenn Kirshner has already been here, calming my Veruca saltiness way the down, and now you're here to double team. I am feeling much better, aren't you? I know you. He is our shared superhero. But in terms of this whole coordination between the DOJ and J6, I know you said midweek, because you know I channel you when you're not here. You said I'm going to be pissed if this screws up the DOJ. But according to Glenn, and I think most people now, they don't think that's what's going to happen. Give us your take on what's happening there.
It's just so weird. There's been so much anger and rage against the Department of Justice for doing their jobs and being quiet that now everyone seems to be sort of siding with the 1-6 committee against the Department of Justice, and they want to protect the 1-6 committee and get everything to a 1-6 committee without realizing that the 1-6 committee can't arrest any of these people or put them in jail. It has to be the Department of Justice. They've been working together for a year, and I first was very mad when the committee said they weren't going to hand anything over. And I think it was mostly the tone in Benny Thompson's voice. He seemed like he was like, this is our stuff, not yours. It seemed ego driven.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I talked to our superhero, Glenn, I talked to a few friends, and they've been working together for a year now. And they're like, yeah, and imagine if Bill Barr comes back into town and we have a Democratic Congress. Do you want him to just reach in and to be able to get anything the Democrats are doing in Congress and share it with all of his buddies? No, you want him to ask for specific things and get a subpoena and you know, make sure that it's for legit stuff. So it's more preserving the institution, like Adam Schiff said, than like being a brat about it.
Yeah, you said that. You said Schiff knows DOJ can't ask for specific transcripts without revealing the existence of a criminal investigation, and that any such request would be immediately leaked by the committee. I imagine DOJ will review what they need to in a skiff alone without staffers. So they'll see it, right? It's just, that's what I think that he's talking about, giving it to them before the televised hearings June 9th, right?
Right, and this might be not because the DOJ doesn't know how to investigate and needs the help of the committee. It's probably the DOJ has this, or they haven't interviewed some of the top line folks yet, or they have, and they want to compare notes to make sure that we don't do what happened in Iran-Contra.
Yes,
remember?
And Travis had a good point.
Well, also, because they've done these, some DOJ has done some interviews, and January 6th committee has done some interviews. Could they be cross-checking these to make sure they're giving consistent stories, like they weren't taking January 6th serious, but they did with DOJ? Because both are under oath. Those are perjury traps, right?
Well, that's what I meant. Well, yeah, that's what I meant when I said we don't want an Iran-Contra. It was because of inconsistent testimony before a grand jury and before the Congress that made it nearly impossible to go after some of the criminals in Iran-Contra for the Department of Justice. And so my assumption is the Department of Justice doesn't need this for their investigatory work. They need to make sure that everyone's story is consistent so that when and if they do indict people and they go to trial, they can't be impeached on their inconsistent testimony.
See, that's what happened when I said to Oliver North's face.
Yes.
It's funny, you should have thoughts about Clinton lying to Congress, since that's what you were convicted of. And then he seemed to take offense to that, to which I had to say, sorry, you got off on a technicality. Anyway. Anyway, apparently it's considered rude for television. I don't know. Anyway, AG, you also... You also said you were talking about Joyce Vance talking about Raskin saying DOJ might have some evidence the committee would like to have as the DOJ seeks committee interviews, and you said, see, it's not just the committee that has what the DOJ wants. The DOJ stuff has stuff the committee wants. So enough with the DOJ has done nothing. The committee has everything weirdness. I just like that you called it weird. We were asking, you were reacting to a Joyce Vance tweet, and you just said, see, it's not just the committee that has what DOJ want. DOJ has stuff the committee wants as well. So stop with the DOJ has nothing. Committee has everything weirdness. So talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, if y'all remember, this has already happened. This has already happened where the January 6th committee went to the National Archives and said, we need stuff that we're investigating. And DOJ stepped in, like Matumbo in the commercial was like, no. You can't have it, because if you get it, it's going to leak immediately. And this is not, I'm not trying to slam Congress for being leaky, but they're a lot leakier than the Department of Justice because there's a lot more people that go in and out. It's not as secure. And so, yeah, there's a ton of stuff that the 1/6 committee wants that DOJ has, and they might have been getting from DOJ in certain instances with certain caveats. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but there's a team of 40 former Department of Justice prosecutors, at least, or around that, working with the committee. A lot of them have worked with the DOJ before. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. You know what strikes me, AG, especially talking to you, is people, I know you've heard this a million times. It's like, oh, AG, I got my hopes up with Mueller and then blah, blah, blah. Well, with Barr maybe cooperating now with the committee, doesn't this all come full circle? And you can say, well, right, but Bill Barr's not in charge anymore, right? This is Joe Biden's Justice Department where hopefully we will actually have some justice. Whatever is happening will not be, let's just say, C-blocked by Bill Barr. Go ahead.
Barr blocked, yes.
There you go.
And that's true, because with the Mueller report, it was either Russia, and there actually wasn't enough evidence because of obstruction to prove a conspiracy. And then there were obstruction of justice charges, which Bill Barr determined did not rise to the level of criminality. So it's not as easy for this DOJ to just overturn what the last DOJ said about their prosecutorial discretion, because they have that. They do have it. It's wrong, but they have it. And so we don't have the land, the plane Rosenstein anymore. We don't have corrupt a-holes.
Yes, you can say that.
Nicely
in
done.
the Department of Justice anymore. Despite what you think of Merrick Garland, I mean, everyone's like, oh, he's Federalist Society. He's not, but whatever. That's not going to happen here. At the very least, if you say he's a moderate leaning conservative, he's going to follow the law. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, we will. And you also just said the 1/6 committee has video evidence that at least one Republican member of the House gave a tour of the layout of the Capitol to individuals in this January 5th letter to, he is actually named Loudinmilk. Mm-hmm. Glenn and I decided he did protest too loudly about that this did not exist. And now it looks like they've got him in their crosshairs, right? That there is evidence.
Yeah, and I'm not actually sure it's video evidence. The way the letter was written made it seem like, you had said security video. We've reviewed the evidence. And so I'm assuming they have the video. But if it's not the video, it's other evidence to debunk this. And you're right. He doth protest. It was just a nice family. We took on a little tour. But Mikey, another congressperson, she's
Cheryl.
like, she's like, no, I saw some MAGA hats, and this wasn't, the Partridge Family that was touring on the 5th. And, I tend to believe her a little bit more than a guy who just lied twice in public. So I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, we were saying, like, Norm Ornstein was just saying, I've been in these offices for years and you can't find them. You wouldn't be able to locate them if you didn't, So there's all of that. The non-reinforced windows. How did they know that? How, Lauren Boebert tweeting Pelosi's location, the panic buttons in Ayanna Pressley's office. I just feel like there's a lot more congressional shoes to drop, don't you think?
Yes, there are. And it's a lot harder to go after members of Congress because of the old speech or debate clause, but it doesn't cover crimes. So we'll see how trepidatious the 1/6 committee is about that, and how they seem to call the bluff when they subpoenaed those 5 Republican members of Congress, and I'm assuming more are on the way.
Well, Glenn made that point with us earlier, Glenn Kirshner, that the difference between this and, say, Watergate is the criminals are in Congress. The insurrectionists are in Congress. So in terms of the, separate, as you were talking about, separation of powers and all that stuff, this just whole thing makes this more complex, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's a lot more complex. There's a lot more players. And we have already 1,000 defendants, 1,000 witnesses testifying to the committee. I can't even imagine. There's no, I've talked to Pete Strzok about this. That no other investigation in the history of the United States comes close.
Yeah, to this breadth. And well, I have to ask you in particular, just because of the whole Mueller thing. All of these same characters, right? Roger Stone, all of the. Do you have confidence there will finally be justice done? That's the other bombshell this week. Is this, what is it? Text chain? He's right in the middle of it, right? With the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and all the people that have already been indicted. So, do you feel like with as you said, at least an actual Justice Department, that karma is finally going to come for these mother?
That I don't know. I haven't been. I haven't been saying that, hey, everybody relax, everybody's going to go to jail, because that would be false hope.
Right.
But I'm also not saying nobody's going to go to jail. I'm saying, and all I've been saying, Stephanie, you know this, is they're investigating. Because there was a lot of people for a long time saying they're not doing anything. They're turning their a blind eye. And I'm like, no, they're investigating. We found out they're investigating. And that, to me, is important. And I think a lot of people, after the Mueller report, quote unquote, disappointment, a lot of people have a unrealistic expectation of justice.
Yeah.
In the country.
Well, let's talk about, speaking of Trump Russia. So this where's my Durham investigation? You retweeted Andrew, who said Berkowitz gets Baker to agree that he has no personal knowledge about whether Sussman was or wasn't representing a client in the 2016 meeting. And you said, and that's the ball game. Durham's only witness to Sussman's quote unquote lie admits he has no knowledge about whether Sussman was or wasn't repping a client. Let's explain this to people that may not even know what this is about, right? So a prominent Democratic lawyer tried to, quote, use the FBI as a political tool when he met with the Bureau's chief counsel about an alleged connection between a Russian bank and Trump, while hiding that he was doing so on behalf of Hillary Clinton. That's what the prosecutor for John Durham is saying to a D.C. jury. The claim about the actions of D.C. lawyer Michael Sussman, which was strongly challenged by the defense, came on the opening day of this. This is the first key test of Durham's controversial 3-year-long probe into the oranges, as Donald Trump would say. Oranges. Of the FBI investigation into Trump's ties to Russia. So Sussman is charged with one count of lying to the FBI when he approached James Baker, then the FBI's general counsel, in September 2016, and told him he was not acting on behalf of any client while bringing him data that purported to show a secret computer messages being exchanged between Alpha Bank, a major Russian financial institution close to Putin, and the Trump Organization. The defense lawyer fired back, saying the Durham's team had stitched together a narrative that didn't make any sense. He said, this case is an injustice, and I suspect when all the evidence is in, you will agree. Sussman didn't lie to the FBI and wouldn't lie to the FBI. Sussman was a serious national security lawyer with top secret security clearance for over 2 decades who approached Baker out of concern for national security. Sussman approached Baker after Joffe brought him information about the alleged contacts between Trump Organization and the Russian bank. Believing the New York Times was about to run a story about the purported communication, Sussman reached out to the FBI to give them a heads up the story was coming so they wouldn't be caught flat-footed. Bosworth said his client's meeting with the FBI was the exact opposite of what the Clinton campaign would have wanted. No one told him to go. No one authorized him to go. Moreover, the FBI subsequently contacted the New York Times asking it to hold the story, which resulted in the newspaper's story being shut down. In fact, the FBI appears to have given little credence to the claims about the computer leak between Alpha Bank and Trump's businesses. It just didn't make sense to the FBI investigators that a supposedly secret communication channel between Trump Organization and Russia would be engaging in communications directly and openly linked to Trump. So finally, contrary to the hopes that Trump's allies that Durham would find criminal wrongdoing by the Bureau, his first case to trial presents the FBI as a victim, not a perpetrator. So I guess that's a pretty good summation of this whole thing, right?
Yeah, it is. And the problem is obvious, right? There's no conspiracy, otherwise one would have been charged. And the judge is like, I'm not even going to entertain talking about whether or not there was a conspiracy, because the proof here is that not everybody had the same goal. So you can't have a conspiracy. It's obvious.
Right.
I'm not even going to entertain it. You haven't charged him with conspiracy. So let's talk about the lie. And Baker said on the stand, as he sits there today, he remembers that Sussman told him he wasn't there on behalf of any client, but then went on to admit that he didn't know, and he testified differently to Congress about it. And he's got like 6 different versions of this story. He's the only one in the room. Nobody was there to take notes. And then 6 months later in an FBI meeting, when Andy McCabe actually said, oh, look, this is the whole, Alpha Bank thing, where Sussman was there on behalf of a client. Nobody in the room stood up and said, he wasn't there on behalf of any client. It wasn't a corrected thing. And while that seems like not a big deal to us, that's not how the FBI operates. All the facts have to be absolutely correct. And so Nobody said anything. So, this would be like charging McCain with lying to the FBI for bringing in the Steele dossier that he was worried about.
Right. Yeah, that's a great analogy. I mean, but the bottom line is they're trying to, obviously the Trump camp tries to use this as saying, oh, see, the whole Trump-Russia thing is nothing. It was nothing. And that's not at all
No.
What
They
yeah.
don't understand that opposition research is legal. Fusion GPS is like, yeah, we were trying to get the story out to the New York Times. That's our job at Fusion GPS.
Yeah.
We are opposition research. You know.